Namaste. Good morning from Southwest India, the Satya Sanjivini Ayurvedic Center where I'm staying, which is a medical center. Ayurveda is the 5,000-year-old Indian medical system. I recorded a video about a few days ago interviewing the doctor. Very interesting. And I'm heading into retreat here shortly. So I thought to share one more video. Will be the last for several months at least, and probably longer. It's feeling like into a next period right now with less sharing in general, both publicly like this and less one-to-one. I just turned 40 the end of last month, and it wasn't very big deal for me. This is cashew fruit. As you can see, cashew nuts. There's just one per fruit. Grow on a tree like this. There's some babies over there. It's a very delicious smelling and tasting, but can only eat maybe one or two of them. It's very astringent. And the nuts themselves, they need a good amount of processing. This is a jackfruit here. This is probably, like at least 6 kgs, like 12 pounds plus. So yeah, I turned 40. I would guess probably in large part because the last decade, especially the last 8 years, since 32-ish, has been just on a continual upslope. When I came into 30, I remember feeling depression and kind of these classic feelings. I was with my recent partner a couple years ago when she turned 30, and she's moving in the direction like I am, but still very much in the world and with friends and ways of thinking, that sort of conditioning. And so she was feeling lots of depression about, I've reached this age and I haven't accomplished this, or I don't have a family, or whatever, even things that didn't really resonate with her now, but because that conditioning is so strong, she was feeling bad. And I remember feeling similar in 30, but 40, I don't feel that at all. Obviously, there's been a lot of practice these years, a lot of practice getting to know myself and connecting with what really feels true to me versus external conditioning and things. And then life just has gotten so much bigger and more interesting over these last years. So my life is way more exciting now than it was when I was 30, even though I had a lot more money back then. And I was living in Southern California. I was flying helicopters in the Marine Corps, Now life is so big. And about 4 years ago, almost exactly, when I came to India the first time, 2020, beginning of 2020, I began experimenting with sharing more. Sharing publicly, like these videos and posts and long emails to groups of people, and also sharing more in person. So being really open with people that I meet, sharing challenges, sharing insecurities, fears, sharing about the journey, talking with dozens and then hundreds of people. I counted 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years, and every time it was counting the amount of people I spoke with or messaged with directly, not in groups, in the previous month, and it was always over 215, 220 different individual people around the world. And yeah, as I've shared before, I did it for 2 main reasons. The first one being we're humans, and almost all of us or all of us experience things like depression, sadness, pain, fear, insecurity, self-consciousness, addiction, doing things that we would rather not do, doing things that we feel bad about, things like that. And it seems like in the world that most of us live in, there's a lot of separation, disconnection. So we feel alone with that. We feel like, oh, I'm the only one who's doing this or that, or I'm such a loser, or people don't like me, and these other people, they're always so accepted, they feel so comfortable, they have so many friends, and I'm such a loser. And that's not true. So I felt to share openly so that people can hear and feel resonance with that, they're not alone. And then because I'm living such a different life, it wasn't the initial intention. I had no idea I would be living a life like this. Even 5-6 years ago, I had no idea it would be like this. Certainly not 10 years ago. But step by step, as I began prioritizing my self-care and trusting myself, this feels good, I'm going in this direction, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel good, this doesn't feel healthy, I'm not going to go there. This feels like I'm going out of obligation or societal pressure, this feels natural, okay, I'm going this way. As I've been doing that, subsequently I've created this life where I haven't worked a job, quote unquote, since basically full-time since I left the Marine Corps end of 2016, and then part-time since I left doing my own entrepreneurial businesses the end of 2019. I received some money from the military, from the Veterans Administration for some different issues, injuries and things that I had during the Marine Corps, and some from small past businesses. And it's a lot less than it ever was before, but that has given me the freedom to live around the world and to really prioritize using my time, energy, savings to grow as a human being, to connect with myself and to evolve and to become more healthy physically and mentally, and just to choose the life that feels right for me. So I experience many different things that most people don't experience, and so I felt to share those as I've benefited so much from others sharing. And then the other reason is because I have found great benefit in speaking openly and honestly. First, I learned it from others, and then I've experienced it so much now that it's not a question that when I feel something that I feel ashamed of or embarrassed of or insecure about, I know that bringing it to light and sharing it, it releases so much of that heaviness or that negativity or that fear or anxiety, and it helps it to heal. These principles transcend all things, and so just like if we have an injury, if we have a cut, we don't just keep it in the dark, away from natural light, away from fresh air. Hello, ants. Ants are incredible. We don't just keep it away from those sorts of things because it won't heal. It will fester and it will rot. And it's the same with psychological. When we have fears, challenges, traumas, insecurities, things that we feel ashamed of, if we just keep them hidden, then they will fester and they will rot. And we're seeing that, with the psychological crises happening in the U.S. and around the world. So those are the two main reasons that I began sharing so much. And it's brought great benefit. I've connected with so many interesting people. I mean, it's my norm to connect with people these days, even just on the street. Connect with people who 10 years ago I would have been thirsting and starving to have interactions like this, a couple times a year. Like I'm very able to interact deeply with people and met so many incredible people and benefited so much and been able to share. And also right now I'm feeling to take a break. There are different seasons, there are different periods in life. It's not just linear, it's not just like do what everybody else has been doing. And in India, these seasons are very well recognized. Different parts of life, different focuses and things. And right now, it's been feeling for several years, and increasing stronger and stronger in the last year and months. Just time to further separate from general society and just live in nature with a small group of people or alone, a small group of fellow practitioners who share very similar values and like mindset, dedicated to just growing and evolving and enjoying life. And that's what I feel like. So I'm interested to see what this next decade of 40s will bring. I was a young Indian friend, female woman. She in her early 20s. She's big into literature major, and loves literature in her own life, writing and reading. And she shared a few weeks back, she shared a poem, I'm guessing written by a European, I'm not sure. And it was a man going into his 40s, and it was quite dark, like grim, just kind of like that grim sarcasm of losing memory and bodies not doing this and that, and the memories of younger years and all this sort of thing. And she shared it with me, and she said, I'm curious your thoughts on this, because it seems like this is so different from your experience. I said, yeah, like, if you hadn't given this to me, I wouldn't read this, because sure, is it a thing that someone wrote and like it's now in the lexicon of literature or whatever? Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's the kind of thing that I want to ingest, because I very much know and believe that external influences can have a very strong impact on the internal. And my life just continues to keep growing bigger and more interesting and exciting. Certainly, there are different parts of the body that aren't the same as they were when young. I mean, as the Buddha says, birth, aging, sickness, death, these are all guarantees, and I'm not denying that. I'm also aging and getting sick at times and things like that. Obviously, that is so. But the groups of people that I interact with, and then the ones that I look up to and read about and hear about, these stories of like, oh, my memory, I'm losing my memory, and, Alzheimer's is a guarantee, and like, oh, of course I'm getting hip replacements and knee replacements, and these don't apply to us. Like, we don't live in that world. And I was chatting with a friend who's a strong meditator, Western, like American style, different, not Eastern. And we were chatting about another man who's very highly advanced practitioner, and what he had shared about how, as one delves deeper into these spiritual paths and into these, into meditation, into these practices, working with consciousness and things, like, actually the mind becomes more powerful, memory becomes more powerful, our abilities become more powerful, because we let go of so many of these blocks and these like unconscious limitations and things that we put on ourselves. There's a study, what was the name? Ellen something, the counterclockwise study, if you check it out, where they took, I don't remember how many people, and they took a couple different groups of people, and they're like 75 plus. One group just normal. One group they had like, remember back when they were 20 some years younger. And then one group they took to a place that was retrofitted to look like when they were 20 plus years younger, so in their 50s. So old newspapers and cars and all this sort of thing, and the results were drastic. These people, I mean, the penultimate was that at the end of the study, the people who were in this retrofitted place, that's a peacock. There's plenty of them here. As they were waiting for the bus at the end of the study, they just began playing football on their own, just like they were 75 plus, and they just began playing football. These, these external impacts are very powerful, and it's why I've been so strongly conscious of the things that I ingest mentally, like watching movies and shows and songs and things. I really don't do it anymore. It's not even a choice anymore. It's like I just can't. I'm so used to this healthy, natural, positive, supportive, empowering goodness. And so when my friend sent me this poem, she asked me, "How does it feel?" Yeah, that's. I can certainly see how people would feel, but that's not my experience. And I'm grateful for that, because 10 years ago, if I would have continued on the direction that I was continuing then, it probably would be my experience. I was already, near disabled with my knees for a period of time, unable to complete the military physical fitness tests, and depression so much, and suicidal thoughts and addiction with alcohol and things. So I'm very grateful to have begun on this journey more intentionally. Funny, last year I was thinking around this time I would be recording a video sharing why I'm choosing not to vote in the upcoming election. Sharing about how I don't consider it, legitimate democracy if we're given choices that don't resonate in any way with my values or with the direction that I'm interested in seeing the United States. I'm speaking about the United States presidential election, but I think this applies around the world, as I have friends in so many different countries, and we have right now and throughout history, a lot of the time we've chosen leaders from within us, within our populations, who don't resonate with us and who don't take care of us, don't help us. We see that around the world, and definitely see that in the United States from my opinion. So I had been thinking that I would speak about why I'm not going to vote and how I consider that to be legitimate and valid. People say, well, the military, fought to protect our right to vote. Yeah, but it's the right to vote or not to vote. Like, for me, it's continuing to perpetuate a system that isn't helping me or others. If I choose to say, well, okay, I don't resonate with either of them, but I'm going to pretend like I do and choose the lesser of two evils, I don't consider that to be valid. So it was a surprise when last year I was in the U.S. and happened to be listening to a podcast I hadn't listened to in a while, but used to listen to, with Aubrey Marcus. And he was interviewing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I haven't followed the news since 2018 is when I remembered deleting the Apple News app, and so listened to I read less than a handful of articles about COVID during COVID times, and then several about Russia, Ukraine. So not much, But what I had heard about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is that he is a conspiracy theorist, that he's a loose cannon, quote unquote. And that was the feeling that I had about him, even though I hadn't even been following the news. Like, that's how strong the conditioning had been about him. So imagine my surprise when I'm listening to this interview and he's seeming very logical, very rational, very neutral, not reactive, not attacking, very much about unity, very much about taking ownership, speaking very transparently, acknowledging challenges that he has faced, such as previous opioid addiction, as unfortunately currently so many people in the United States and the world, but definitely the United States, are challenged with opioid addiction. I said more young people died of opioid overdoses, drug overdoses last year in the United States than in all the 20 years of the Vietnam War. It's, a challenge. And for him to be speaking openly about these sorts of things, I was very impressed. So over these last months, I've listened to probably a handful of interviews with him, and It's very different from because I'll ask people, even people who are living overseas, Americans, or who are open-minded in ways. What do you think about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? And they just give these write-off answers, as I had heard as well. Oh, he's anti-vax, or he's a conspiracy theorist, or whatever. And I said, well, have you actually listened to anything he says? Well, no, I haven't. Just heard these little blurbs, or these little talking points, or these little things taken out of context. And yeah, it's very different. Very different the way that he communicates. When I listen to him, it's like, when did this not become the norm to speak this way as a leader? In the Marine Corps, leadership, everything falls under the leader. If the subordinates, if the people beneath us in the hierarchy, if they do something, we don't blame them. We talk to the leader. The leader takes responsibility. I was an officer in the Marine Corps. And it's like, when did that not become the norm in the United States and in governments? And don't see that with Donald Trump. Now, I was investing in real estate since 2008. I was a junior, young investor back then. But one of my friends had Trump University back in 2009, and we listened to a little bit of it, and it was clear this is not a master. This is not someone I'm interested in learning from. It was just a hustle. It was just a bunch of talking stuff to make some money. We never thought of him as a serious investor. And then obviously seeing his history with intentional bankruptcies, where he's managing companies poorly, and then when he does that and they don't succeed, then he's intentionally going bankrupt and harming lots and lots of small businesses and sole proprietors and individual Americans. And it's not like he was working, for the greater good. I mean, he's working with casinos. This is like Biff from Back to the Future. I mean, these are the toxic industries of creating addiction and taking money from people. And he's failing at those, and then he's harming even more people. And his actions as president, definitely don't align with me. I mean, lots of aggression, lots of blaming, lots of attacking, not unification. It's very un-American, in my opinion. He closed the borders for, I believe it was 7 countries: Venezuela, Yemen, Iran, Afghanistan. These are countries that have challenges, a lot of them in part due to U.S. foreign policy. But to close the doors, America was based and born and is a country of immigrants, and that is one of our great strengths. And that's the founding fathers. And to say, well, we're not going to accept certain people just because, it wasn't like, there has been zero terrorist activity in the United States from people from any of those countries. It's not like there was, some very serious threat or something. For him to do that, I consider that just un-American. And so many other things. I mean, General Mattis, who was his defense secretary, General Mattis is a Marine, and he's the man that we Marines, at least in my era, we looked up to as the man. General Mattis is the man. He is a general, so he could be in the back doing his thing, but he is there in the front lines, leading directly, taking ownership. They call him the warrior monk because he's reading continually. He's having all of his people reading. He's having them learning. He's working with the local population. What did he say about President Trump? You can read General Mattis's open letter or white letter or whatever when he left. He said he hasn't seen someone who seems to be more a threat to the United States as president than President Trump, if I'm remembering correctly. But he definitely wasn't supportive of him. And no one in his previous cabinet was, let's listen to that. But then we've got President Biden, and I don't feel any more interest in having him as a president either. His handling of COVID, I think, was an utter failure. These sorts of situations where there's lots of challenge, these are opportunities, great opportunities we've seen throughout history, where we can bring people together to work for the greater good, for solutions to these challenges, whether it's a war or a famine or some sort of natural disaster, or in this case, COVID. And what happened? Was he unifying? Did he bring people together? It doesn't matter what the others did. It doesn't matter if Republicans weren't. Did he bring people together? No. It became this political, this culture war sort of thing of demonizing and blaming and attacking and not successful. I mean, the United States of America had, I think, the highest per capita deaths in COVID, the country with the most expensive healthcare system, and who created the vaccines, so had the high technology, and we had the most mortality. And very clearly, like censorship, very clearly going against the human rights of the citizens and what the country was founded on. Elon Musk and Twitter, they released, I think, what they call the Twitter files, where it showed very clearly, it's not disputed. You can go ahead and look at it. The government sent very clear messages to the social media and the media organizations and said, if you do not censor people who are speaking against what the government's party line is, there will be serious repercussions that could force them out of business. Thankfully, Elon Musk and Twitter released these, but that it wasn't about like, hey, if you need to stop people who are spreading like serious disinformation, which is still legal in the United States, and that would still be illegal for them to say, hey, you must censor people who are spreading disinformation, because it is, freedom of speech. We can talk about things. But they weren't even saying that. They were saying you must censor people who are saying things other than the party line. And what was the party line? It wasn't beneficial for the United States population or the world. It wasn't sharing, hey, we have this plethora, hundreds of years of Western medicine and thousands of years of medicine, like in Ayurveda here, knowing how to boost the immune system, how to handle epidemics, how to handle viral infections, how to strengthen the lungs. It wasn't saying any of that sort of thing. It was saying only vaccines. And vaccines is one part of it. I'm not saying that, they're good or bad. I'm not getting into that. But these were untested, and there was no other holistic support. I was in 8 or so countries during COVID around the world, and I was 15 months in India. So I got to see COVID from quite a different perspective than most people, and certainly from most Americans. And I got to be in places like Uganda, which had a very low COVID mortality rate compared to the U.S. And they were doing things. Their government was actually teaching them and sharing things. Just, even basic things like here in India, it's just common that you drink warm water with ginger, or you're taking turmeric, or breathing in steam with different medicated herbs and things. This is not like, this is scientifically backed. I'm here at a center, as I shared in the other video. I saw a woman come in her 60s who had Parkinson's disease for years, where she was unable to walk, shaking very strongly. Within 6 days or so, she's walking on her own down the stairs from the second floor. She's discharged on day 12, walking on her own, carrying her own bag and things. The Western medicine is not able to do this. I've never heard anyone in allopathy or Western medicine saying that they can do that at all, let alone do that in 10, 12 days. And we have so much information, we have so much knowledge, but it wasn't spread during COVID. Then his handling of the financial situation, printing so much money, obviously inflation is going to happen, and the large amount of that money didn't go to the Americans, the individual Americans, went to big businesses. And currently what's been happening with the U.S. Treasury bonds, which have been greatly devalued, and this is kind of like the bedrock that the U.S. dollar and the U.S. stands upon, and we'll see what it comes from that, but it has the potential to be just as challenging as the subprime mortgage issue that brought about the Great Recession in the late 2000s. Many things. President Biden, I haven't seen him as a unifier. So like I said, I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised, and subsequently now pleasantly surprised to be sharing this video where I had thought I would be speaking about how I'm not going to vote because I'm not going to be a part of this system and support it. And it's my current intention, as of now, to be voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But, I share this not to try and convince you to do that, but rather just if you haven't heard anything that he has said. There's so many cashew fruit here. I'm going to get one after the video. If you haven't heard anything that he has said, and if you've got your mind made up that he's this or that or anti-vax or that's one of them, anti-vax. He says openly that he's received all the vaccination schedule, and his children have all received the vaccination schedule. He hasn't taken the COVID vaccine, as I haven't taken it, not because we're anti-vax. I have more vaccinations than most anyone watching this video, except other fellow military members and people who have been to Africa and around the world. But I have had plenty of vaccinations. But I chose not to take the COVID vaccine because I didn't feel comfortable with the lack of testing. It didn't go through the traditional multi-year testing system that has been created for vaccinations. Then there are things like the co-inventor of the mRNA vaccine speaking out openly, saying this is not intended for something like COVID, and saying that he himself didn't choose to get it. Plenty of things like that. It doesn't make us anti-vax, If anything, this is based in science. Science is not about forcing and threatening. There's a quote, I forget what it was exactly. The truth does not mind, is not afraid of being investigated. A lie doesn't can't stand being questioned, or something like that. Like, these things are backed in science, and we can find it. We know that it's not science. We know it's not truth when they say, shut up and do as I tell you. Don't question, don't ask for reasons why. Just do what I say because I know best and I know better than you. That's not the way of leadership. That's not the way that we do things. So I've been interested to hear Robert F. Kennedy's standpoint on all these different things. And like I say, I'll share some videos where you can get a feel for yourself, not just about the things that he says, but also how he says them. How does it feel? Because anyone can say nice things or I'm going to solve the economy or whatever. But as I have shared in videos many times, I believe from personal experience and from lots of research and other experience with other people, the words that we use have great power. And they also have a strong clues into the thinking beneath them. It's not just, I said that, I was just joking, I don't really think I'm stupid, I'm just teasing myself. No, that's not the way that it works. Like, the subconscious brings these things up, and these are signs of how we actually think. And so when you listen to someone like RFK, where he's speaking, not just saying, I want to bring about unity, let's increase the health of the population, we have such massive chronic illness, let's focus on that. But listen to the way that he says it. And then again, if you don't feel to vote for him, sweet, no worries. But the way that this is being handled right now in this democracy, in this democratic system, where he's not being allowed to be on the ballot, he has to raise X amount of thousands of signatures per every state in order to be on the ballot. And some states now, I believe it was Kansas, he was given the requirement to have 5,000 signatures for the ballot, and then they were quickly trying to go through the legal system to raise that to 21,000. These are not democratic ways of doing things. This is not a fair competition. There's nothing that says that we can only have Democrat and Republican Party. And as I imagine for those of you who watch the news and things, I think that Fox has had some interviews with him, which is funny because historically I would say I wouldn't touch Fox with a 10-foot pole. It seems so biased, and I still don't because I don't follow the news. But I believe that MSN, NBC, CNN, these have not been having any sort of interviews with him, just these little blurbs that try to make him seem like he's crazy or sound like he's, unbalanced or whatever like that. This is a concerted attempt. He demonstrated proof that he was just sharing factual information, blocked from Instagram. Anyone who was signing up with an email handle from his Kennedy platform was immediately blocked for 6 months. This is not legal. These are not the ways that we do things in democracy. And so even if you don't feel to vote for him, it's very clear, I think, to most of us that this two-party Democrat-Republican system is not working for us. We're given these options that basically no one wants, that no one is happy about, and we're put in a country that is continuing to go in directions that we don't support. And so let's help bring about more diversity of options. Even if we don't, like I say, even if you don't feel to vote for him, we can still raise signatures, or we can become informed about this and share with others. I don't agree with I don't agree with making decisions based out of fear. And I don't agree with I'm so afraid that Trump or Biden will get elected again, so I don't want to vote for Mr. Kennedy or for someone else because that will take votes away from the person that the lesser of two evils that I would prefer over this other person. Let's not make those decisions, because those are the ways that these sorts of systems continue. They're the ways that these are perpetuated, where we're in environments and situations that we don't really feel good about, but we keep perpetuating it because of fear of something else. It's very possible, as challenging as life is in the US and around the world right now, it's very possible that just within a few years, and certainly within some decades, life can transform into something that resonates with us, that supports us, that empowers us, that aligns with us. It can be healthy. It can be taking ownership. It can be moving in the beneficial direction. There's lots of challenges right now for sure. But when isn't there challenges? That's a part of life. When we acknowledge them, honestly, we don't blame about them, when we take ownership for them, when we work together by starting with ourselves, then we can make these big, awesome, positive improvements. So I will be entering into a couple months of dark retreat here, and after that heading into Tibet and Nepal. And I don't know what will happen in these months of meditation retreat and solitude. I don't know exactly what will happen, but I have a strong confidence that it's going to be beneficial, that it's going to assist me, and subsequently that means it's going to be beneficial for every person that I ever interact with for the rest of my life, because that's the way it works. So that's possible for you as well, wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing. As the author Robin Sharma says, small positive daily practices repeated consistently over time yields stunning results. And this is possible for us as well. Mr. Kennedy, actually, at the end of this 2-hour interview that I saw recently that I will post, he was talking about how he used to be very much complaining and blaming. Their family has experienced a lot of challenges. He was there with his father when his father's assassinated, and his uncle was assassinated previously, and then strong smear campaigns and attacks, and obviously what he's been experiencing. So decades ago, he used to be big into complaining. And during one Lent season, which is a season the Catholic faith follow, for 40 days, often people stop eating meat or stop having, alcohol or sweets or whatever. He chose to not complain for 40 days. And any time that some complaint came up, he would say, "Oh, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I have glass in front of me in this windshield of the car, so when I'm driving, I'm not getting hit by bugs." Or I'm grateful for this meal. Or I'm grateful that my mother and my siblings are alive, or whatever. And he said subsequently that brought about such great results that he doesn't complain anymore. And that's very similar to practice that I do. Small, positive daily practices, repeated consistently over time, yield stunning results. So I wish you the very best, friends. Don't know when we'll be chatting again. You're awesome. You're doing great. There's so much more available. And it's wonderful. Let's co-create it together. I wish you much love, happiness, peace. Namaste.